But our job as investors is to be prepared for that event, because history shows clearly that these kind of behaviors on the part of politicians and central bankers and all of that eventually lead to a rush into gold and silver. I think it happens again.
Here at the StockPulse Silver Symposium, I've got Jeff Clark from goldsilver.com. Jeff, appreciate you making the trip from Sacramento all the way over to Coeur d'Alene, the heart of where the silver's at, right?
That's right, Silver Valley. I love being here. Thank you for having this event. I love being back live. I think everybody who's here is really enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. So thank you guys for having this event. It's great.
Well, appreciate that. And yeah, we hope to make it a big event and get it back here where it belongs, to Silver Valley.
Yeah.
So let's get into the heart of the matter here, silver. You had a little talk. Been here before.
Right.
Let's, for those not able to see it, why don't you run us through what you were talking about?
Well, basically the idea is, what is happening with silver? It's down 22% from its high a year ago, and yet we're surrounded by all these catalysts, right? There are major catalysts surrounding the price that should be pushing it higher, that we think would normally push it higher, right? And yet the price is falling. So what is going on? Well, the main thing I wanted to get across in my talk this morning was we've been here before. From 1974 to 1976, the silver price fell 43% over a 2-year period of time, and yet look back at all the major catalysts that were in place then. The price is falling, but it was surrounded by all these major factors that should have been pushing the price higher, right? They had high inflation, high unemployment, there was a recession, the energy crisis had just kicked off, there were political concerns, geopolitical concerns, the list goes on. There was all these catalysts that should have pushed the price higher, and silver did nothing but fall. So what happened then is kind of like what's happening now. And we know how that story ended, right? From 1976 to 1980, its peak, the silver price went 12x. So all the people that were kooks back then and calling for higher silver prices actually ended up being right despite the negative price action. This is very similar today. I think what's happening now is similar to then. We have a falling price, but the catalysts are surrounding us and building. I think that's going to presage the next spike in the silver price, and I think that's what's coming.
Military policy suggests everything you just said is absolutely right. So if you are playing that record again, I think you're going to have a lot of happy people, certainly in this sector around here. But what's going to really get this thing going, Jeff?
Well, it could be any number of things, right? Back then they had all these catalysts and nothing seemed to really ignite the gold and silver price. It was gold too, right? It was precious metals. Nothing really seemed to ignite it. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, like David Morgan used to say, 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of time, right? All of a sudden it exploded. It was extremely volatile. That's when people made most of their profit. I think a similar thing is going to happen now. For me, it's probably going to be either another major crisis, some type of monetary event, however that might play out. But for me, the main thing is probably going to be the mainstream investor moving out of the stock market and over into the gold and silver markets. And I think when that begins to take place, that's when we'll begin to see some of the great price action. So what that means is that the stock market is probably going to have to go weak. Either it goes into a bear market, it has a correction, or a major crash. If there's a major crash, everything's going to probably go down with it at first. But the recovery will be a gold and silver recovery, not necessarily a stock market recovery, and that'll push a lot of investors over into the gold and silver space. Silver is especially attractive in that scenario, right? Because it's so small. It's so tiny, and I showed that in my talk, just how tiny this market is. It just takes a little bit of capital coming over. So when that happens, I think that's going to be our next big spike in the silver price. I think that's coming. I wish I knew the timing. We don't know that, but our job as investors is to be prepared for that event, because history shows clearly that these kind of behaviors on the part of politicians and central bankers and all of that eventually lead to a rush into gold and silver. I think it happens again.
So again, the Fed's basically said they're going to inflate this thing, right? They won't let this thing go down, I would believe. So the housing market has to remain strong. Is this what's going to be, I guess, the thing that takes down the stock market? What would be?
Yeah, that's interesting because, in my opinion, the Fed can influence the market, but they can't control the market. And so the market is what the market will do what the market will do. And investors are independent of the Fed. They'll watch the Fed, but they'll act independently. And at some point, if they get too skeptical of the Fed, or they don't like what they're doing, or the worst case scenario, they don't believe that what the Fed is saying is actually going to work out, right? So something along those lines, I think, could be another catalyst. We're in an environment, we're actually in a very ideal environment for gold and silver right now. Again, they haven't been moving, but we've seen this picture before, we've seen this movie before, and I think basically what is happening, the spring is coiling. It's getting tighter. It's a beach ball underwater, and I think that's that's going to be coming. And the Fed may help it.
Yeah, one of my favorite analogies, I say it all the time, the beach ball underwater, it's about ready to go. Yeah. So I guess let's give a takeaway to the audience here. Patience was the word I've heard all day long. People in this sector, it's a tough word to swallow.
Right.
It's a cop-out almost, for all these, basically all the projects that have been funded and all that in this sector. So when does this come home to roost? I mean, you just laid it out that you don't really know, but we've been here before. So can you give any kind of inkling?
If you match this bull market, and I do believe, in spite of the prices for gold and silver, that we're still in a bull market in the big picture. If you match us up to the 1970s, because there were major catalysts then, we have major catalysts now. So that's why I keep going back to that mid-70s time period. At some point, I think the spring is going to break for both gold and silver. If you match us up to that time period, we're in approximately August of 1977. So it was another year before gold and silver really took off. So what if I told you you could add a zero to your investment in silver, but it would be 2 or 3 years away from now? I think that's kind of what we're looking at. But who knows? The stock market could crash in October. That's typically a poor month for stocks. Who knows what's going to happen? I wish I had a better feel for the time. But if you compare us back to the late 70s, we're in about August of 77. We're about a year away until it begins to really gel. So this time next year, at the conference next year, things could be getting very interesting.
For those who want to follow you, talkaboutgoldsilver.com.
I love working with Mike Maloney at goldsilver.com. He's a very genuine person. He's well researched. He looks at history. He's famous for saying the further back you look, the further ahead you can look. His Hidden Secrets of Money series is well worth watching. Even just watch the first one. It's very informative, educational, movie quality stuff. And then I'm on the Twitter at The Gold Advisor is my handle if anybody wants to follow. I did promise I would reveal my personal picks on Twitter, so that's what I do on Twitter, is reveal my personal mining picks, if that's of interest.
I think it is. Appreciate that. It's Jeff Clark, goldsilver.com. Jeff, appreciate you taking the time.
Great to be here. Thanks for having the event.